Thank you so much, and good evening. It's an honor to be here. I want to thank the Shabazz Center, the Northern Manhattan Democrats, and the Barack Obama Democratic for sponsoring this forum. Just as a point of pride, I'm the only American candidate that supported the president in 2007. I was a delegate. Everybody else was on the other side, so I just want to point that out. Distinguishing characteristic. My name is Sal Albanese, and I'm the only person in this race who's not a professional politician. I know everyone who's in this room is sick of politics as usual, and I know you're all interested in who the next mayor is going to be. I'm going to spend the next 9 months showing you the most qualified candidate to lead the city. A little bit about me. I came here as an immigrant at the age of 8. I grew up in a working class neighborhood in Brooklyn. My mother supported us on a garment worker's salary. I attended the public schools. It was the sports programs, the libraries, the services the city offered that elevated my family from the working class to the middle class. I spent 11 years as a New York City public school teacher. I then was elected to the city council in 1982, and I had a very distinguished record there. I retained my independence for 15 years. It was an unblemished record of independence, from gay rights to the living wage bill to term limits. I always voted in the way that was in the best interest of the city and of my constituents. I spent the last 15 years working as a lawyer in the financial services profession. Looking ahead, New York City faces some unique challenges and competition from cities around the world. We can't rest on our laurels, and Hurricane Sandy showed that we are just doing that. We need to invest in our roads, bridges, mass transit system. We need to shore up our power grid, protect our coastline. We also need to invest in our human infrastructure as well. We need to spend money on our schools in a big way. We need to create jobs in New York City that will maintain the brain power and creativity that is New York. But to accomplish any of that, you need a government that works for its citizens. Right now, we have an out-of-touch political class that basically spends a lot more time in cocktail parties than listening to people in their neighborhoods. They're often indebted to special interests. When they get there, they simply can't get things done on the merits. That's why I'm running. I have a record of independence. Just look at my city council record. I don't just talk about it, I lived it. I think that people in the city are looking for an independent voice who's going to do things based on the merits. We can build a fairer city, a smarter city, and a safer city together. I think that every neighborhood in the city should feel that like they're safe. We should make sure that people get paid a fair wage for a day's work, and every young person has the skills to go on to college. That's why I'm running. I don't just talk about independence. I said I lived it. We have been in this campaign just a couple of weeks. Some of the political class would like to keep us out of the game, but hopefully with your help and others around the city, we can shock the political class and build a better New York. So I look forward to the questions.
Great, thank you. And thank you all for joining us in this forum today. You had talked a lot about the fact in this short discourse that you aren't interested in those that are on the circuit and sort of have been running the campaign now for years. What do you know about Washington Heights and its challenges?
Well, I'm familiar with the city. I know that Washington Heights has been a neighborhood of immigrants, particularly Dominican Americans. There's always been a history of overcrowding, particularly in public schools. I've worked with some of the elected officials on that over the years when I was on the education committee. I think it's an area that has lots of small businesses, and I plan on being very small business friendly. Obviously the schools are important. Small businesses are pivotal. I will work to do that. We will continue to work to reduce the overcrowding in our schools, continue to build schools, and also focus on keeping the neighborhood safe. I think every neighborhood in the city is concerned about public safety. I know a lot about policing. I spent 15 years in that community. I've written about it, and I believe that that's also an important issue in Washington Heights.
And so what specifically would you do about policing? What do you think needs to change?
Well, we released a public safety plan just 2 weeks ago that calls for hiring 3,800 officers because we are suffering a patrol officer shortage right now. We're down about 7,000 officers. While the homicide rate continues to be low, which is a positive thing, we have 1,000 officers assigned to anti-terrorism, which is also important. But many neighborhoods have quality of life conditions that are not being addressed. I want those 3,800 officers to be assigned to patrol so they can interact with the community, build up rapport and trust within the community instead of just operating in a crisis-oriented fashion or just responding to 911 calls. So I want to go back to having more officers assigned to neighborhoods to address conditions that are not being addressed now. For example, in the Grand Concourse in the Bronx, I was at a meeting just last week. I talked to a gentleman who told me that he wants to move out of the Bronx because he's paying $1,300 in rent on the Grand Concourse, but he can't sleep at night. There are people playing boom boxes and all of the drug dealing going on. The police are not addressing it, and the main reason is there are very few cops on patrol. So that's one of the things I would do specifically. Washington Heights will get a good number of those officers assigned to patrol that would interact with the community and build up the trust, which is essential to good policing. If you don't have trust between the community and the police, you will not be able to solve some of the issues that we discussed that have an impact on people's quality of life.
And on the question of stop and frisk, do you have a specific policy yourself? Do you have a position on stop and frisk?
Well, stop and frisk, well, first of all, we live in the United States of America. You should only stop somebody for probable cause. So my position is that stop and frisk is a legal tool when used appropriately. Also, I believe it doesn't deter people from carrying guns. So it's a useful tool that needs to be tweaked a bit. Here's my proposal. First thing I would do is I would spend a significant amount of time cadets in the academy, making sure that they understand clearly what a constitutional stop is. And I would also continue that on a regular level when they're on the job to make sure that they're tested, they're evaluated. Stops and frisks have to be done on a constitutional basis, and also focus on quality rather than quantity. We don't want to have a quota-driven policing strategy. So that, in conjunction with the additional patrol officers, which would actually diminish some of the problems that exist in some of the neighborhoods, because the patrol officers would develop a rapport with the community and have trust between them, and relay information and really target the people who are really causing the problems.
Thank you so much for coming tonight. I'd like to piggyback on that topic. Washington Heights and Inwood has had a policing strategy for about 2 years now of bringing in impact zone police officers to deal with hotspots in the neighborhood. And what I've heard from residents for many years now, one side of the community feels that it's an effective strategy, but not something that can be implemented long term. They're clamoring for beat cops to come back, much like you're describing. And the other part of the community that happens to live in the hotspots say they really feel they're being oppressed by the police, having a police officer on every single corner moving down a stretch in the neighborhood. So how would you implement a policing strategy?
Well, as I said, you hit the nail on the head. I think that we certainly need more additional officers on patrol relating to the community. They're assigned on a regular basis, so we can establish that trust and also address those quality of life conditions. Operation Impact has been, it's a balancing act. There are some negatives. You don't want your neighbor to look like an armed camp. But at the same time, you do, what happens in many neighborhoods is there are a group of people, small, could be a burglary ring or a robbery ring, that really increases crime in that area dramatically. Because you have all of these cops assigned to that area, they basically go away, they get locked up, and crime is reduced dramatically. So for a short period of time, it may cause some people to feel uncomfortable, but at the end of the day, if the crime reduction is significant there, I think it's worth doing as long as they move out. You don't want, as I said, you don't want your neighborhood to look like an armed camp, but at the same time, you want to make sure that you don't have a huge crime rate where people can't walk the streets.
Well, so if I could ask you to just continue on that vein, what basically people in the residents in the area are saying is this cannot be the strategy moving forward for years on end. That we need more cops in the area, we need more policing, and then, like you're saying, people who are actually service-oriented, police and building relationships. So how would you actually go about doing that? How would you bring those extra cops?
You basically outline my public safety plan. That's what it calls for. The purpose of the additional 3,800 officers is to be assigned to patrols in communities so they interact, and they know the people who live in public housing. They know the block association president. So they build up a trust and a rapport and actually prevent things from happening and address those problem life conditions that drive people out of neighborhoods. So that's what our plan calls for.
So you're saying you would commit to a budget to bring those 3,800?
Absolutely.
And where would you put police to fight terrorism throughout the 5 boroughs?
Well, the police, the terrorism number of cops that are assigned to the anti-terrorism unit was 1,000 officers. They would stay. The problem that we have is when I was on the city council, Benítez was the mayor, we hired a lot of police officers. We went from 24,000 to almost 40,000. We're now down to about 8,000 cops from the peak period. Therefore, with the anti-terrorism efforts and with the Operation Impact and the targeted of certain areas for guns, there aren't too many cops on patrol. So we want to. I'm not saying we need to hire 8,000. I think 3,800 assigned to patrol in neighborhoods, and Washington Heights and Inwood would get a good number of those cops, and as they would be assigned there, they wouldn't be removed and moved around the city.
My question is regarding the Latino community. You have been out of politics for quite a while. A lot of people.
I sat here when I was.
A lot of people do not know you, and my question is, why would a Latino vote for you?
Well, I think I'm the most qualified mayor with the city, whether it be for Latinos or for African Americans, what have you. But I represented Sunset Park for years on the city council, and I had a very good relationship with the Latino community there, and I did. My 15 years in the city council, I had significant support. Also, many Latinos are immigrants. I came here from Italy at the age of 8. I couldn't speak the language. I understand what it's like to come to a country and the intimidation of not being able to speak the language, making sure that institutions are culturally sensitive to Latinos and the other ethnic and racial groups in the city. So I have first-hand experience with that, and I believe that Latino voters will be supported.
You mentioned, language, and language is one of those, I guess, issues in the public school systems. A lot of our students are not fluent in English, and they are in poor neighborhoods where a lot of schools are closing because of low performance. Do you have a particular plan to deal with this issue that affects a lot of our community members?
Well, I'm not a big fan of school closings. I mean, I believe some schools could be redesigned and certainly reformed. I mean, I did that in my community. I redesigned the high school, Bay Ridge High School. We made it a high school telecommunications. Chancellor Alvarado was there. Only in the rare circumstances should we close schools. And you see the acrimony that's caused around the city because of these school closings. I think that as you know, I was a school teacher for 11 years. I was actually in the classroom, the only candidate in this race that knows what it's like to stand in front of 35 students and 5 times a day. So I can tell you that there are 2 things I would do. I would focus on. One is early intervention. I'm not talking about pre-kindergarten or Head Start. I'm talking before that. When kids are two months old. I mean, one of the biggest problems with learning issues is poverty. Poverty is one of the driving forces, and also the first 3 years of a child's life is significant. So I think we have to work with parents to support them, to make sure that they get the proper nurturing techniques down pat that they have in the Harlem Children's Zone. They have Jeff Kennedy does a great job. We need to expand that throughout the city. The second thing I would do is reform the way teachers are trained. I remember walking into my high school the first day that I started teaching, and they handed me a lesson plan book, and they said, okay, Mr. Albanese, good luck. It was sink or swim. Nobody mentored me. Nobody really supported me. I think we need to have extensive student teaching experience. I'm talking about a year before you actually, almost like a doctor as an intern, to really learn how to teach. And then when you're teaching, you need to be supported and mentored. I was watching Bill Gates this morning on TV. They're doing a lot of stuff with videotaping new teachers, giving them feedback, providing the support that they need to make them better teachers. And I would focus on that. When I started teaching, the bureaucracy was more interested in the Delaney book. That I turned in the Delaney book in time. They didn't care what I was doing in the classroom. The focal point should be what is going on in the classroom. How do we improve the teachers' techniques? Teachers need to learn a lot more, and you know, half of them leave the first couple of years because they're so overwhelmed. So that's teacher training and early intervention would be my 2 cornerstones.
Mr. Albanese, continue with that topic. Do you think it takes too long and it's too complicated to fire a bad teacher in the city today?
I think the process has been streamlined. It definitely was a problem. I think that teachers need due process. They can't be fired summarily, but I believe that it took too long, and now we're on the right path where teachers can be fired if they just can't cut it in the classroom. I think we need to work with them, but at some point there are some teachers who just can't teach. So you've got to move them out because the kids suffer in the long run.
Do you think that too long for that process? 2 years, I'm sorry, for that process is too long?
Absolutely, 2 years is too long. It should be streamlined even further. Absolutely. I think you give the teachers some time to try and improve, and after a while, you know, it's time to move on.
So do you favor Mayor Bloomberg's position in this conflict with UFT?
No, I don't favor the mayor's position with UFT. I think what he's done with UFT is a disaster. I mean, I support teacher evaluations, which is made up of different components, including test scores and other issues like attendance, class morale, and what have you. But what the mayor has done here is irresponsible. He should have been in a room with Michael Mulgrew and hammered out an agreement, because it may cost the city $1 billion, which means class size will go up, after school programs will be cut. It's political malpractice. I think the mayor, who by the way, on balance, has not been a bad mayor the first 2 years. This third term, which I oppose vehemently, shouldn't have happened, is taking his eye off the ball. I think he's already checked out. I mean, he's involved in macro issues. He's flying to Bermuda. I don't know what he's doing. He should have been in that room hammering that out. It's irresponsible.
And really quick, talking about another mayor across the street tonight, trying to get better, Mayor Ed Koch.
Yes.
Can you think of any particular policy from Mayor Koch that you would like to bring back?
You know, one of the things that I had some disagreements with the mayor on a number of fronts, but one of the things I liked about his administration was the affordable housing program. They built a lot of affordable housing throughout the city. One of the largest building programs took place during the Koch years. We need affordable housing in the city. I think what he did in that area was laudatory.
Thank you, and I think we're going to start reading some questions from the audience.
Thank you. From the audience, on the question of the MTA, what kind of hands-on role will you play? And to follow up, what will you do to keep fares and tolls from spiraling further out of control?
Well, I will tell you that I think that the mayor of the city of New York should be held more accountable to the system. At the present time, as you know, the state has the major leverage. The governor does. I would like to see, from a city level, including at the mayor's level, a much more significant role, and also being held accountable for the transit system, because it's the lifeblood of the city. I think that the fares that just went up are really unconscionable. I mean, inflation is about 2%. Fares went up almost 10%. It's incredible, and people are beginning to find it unaffordable. So I would fight hard for mass transit aid. There's legislation in D.C. that would provide more money for our infrastructure, our mass transit infrastructure, and also use it on an operating level. You know, one of the other problems is that 50% of the MTA's money goes to debt service. So we got to do something to reduce that debt, so that money can go to keeping the fares at a reasonable level. It'll be one of my priorities. Also, tolls are out of control. I mean, I don't know how many of you go to the Peralta Bridge. It's going to be $15 to cross the bridge. I've never heard of a bridge in America where it costs $15. So we have to equalize this. We have to figure out a way because working people cannot afford to pay all of that money. It's also an economic development issue. Companies going back and forth, the trucks going back and forth, it's costing them too much. But it's going to come down, we have to generate some revenue from somewhere, and I've got some ideas which I don't want to release now because we'll go with them out. I don't want to give my opponents any ideas. We'll be rolling them out soon.
We have another question from the audience. How do you propose that the city address its lack of programs that support youth? For example, after-school programming, job training, etc.
Well, I'm a very big believer in after-school programs. I mentioned I attended John G. High School in Brooklyn. I really was not academically oriented. I really didn't care about school too much in those days. I'm not proud of that, but that was the case. But what kept me in school was I had to pass 3 subjects. I was a varsity baseball player. To stay on the team, I had to pass those subjects. And once again, that was an after-school program. And I also saw the importance in neighborhoods of having after-school centers open in the evening, in the afternoons. It kept us all out of trouble. It was a pretty tough neighborhood, a lot of youth gang activity. And if it wasn't for those sports programs, it could be a music program, it could be an art program, something that keeps kids occupied after school and builds their self-esteem. It saved an awful lot of kids. And I think it's a disaster that we have kids, I see them on the street begging for money so that they can buy their uniforms. Today I read the New York Times. We have a chess team in East New York, which is the best chess team in America. I mean, these are kids from the inner city. The best chess player in the country is a young Mexican-American kid. And they have to go out and raise $50,000 to be able to travel and maintain that program. I have a plan to fund after-school and evening programs and sports programs. By the way, also we'll deal with obesity. One of the problems that we had is when I was growing up, kids were always in the street playing ball, and now they're playing video games, and because there's no physical activity for them. So I'm a big believer in promoting after-school and evening programs to keep kids active.
Thank you very much for participating today.